Hello and welcome to the final panel of the day for the World Agility Forum 2020. As Hugo said, my name is Anu Smalley, and I have the honor of moderating these 5 amazing thought leaders as they discuss a topic that is very close to everybody's heart right now, the future of work. So let's look at our panelists. Our 5 panelists today. Let me begin with Joseph. Joseph Pellerin has the unique combination of being a professional psychologist as well as being one of the world's most experienced agilists. He specializes in helping organizations deal with challenges of agility and helping agilists deal with the challenges of these organizations. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you.
Diana Larsen, known as a visionary pragmatist, Diana is the co-founder of Agile Fluency Project, where she serves as a principal coach, consultant, and mentor. Through her books, talks, and work with clients, Diana has contributed to foundations of and extensions to Agile thought. Most recently, she co-authored and offers a free book, The Agile Fluency Model, A Brief Guide to Success with Agile. Diana, welcome.
Thank you.
Fabiola Iolger is a pioneer in Agile HR, and together with her team, she helps organizations accelerate their Agile transformation through a relentless focus on people and HR. Fabiola, welcome from New York.
Thank you for having me.
Mirko Kleiner is an Agile enterprise coach. He's an international speaker and author, co-founder of Flow Days. He is a thought leader in Lean Agile Procurement and is the president of Lean Agile Procurement Alliance, which is currently disrupting the world of procurement with Agile. Mirko, welcome.
Thanks, Anu.
Our final panelist is John Rudd. John is the former owner of Solutions IQ, an Agile consultancy that was acquired by Accenture in 2017. John now runs the global business agility practice for Accenture. John, welcome.
Glad to be here.
I am so excited to be talking with all of you about the future of work. And I know when I started talking to Hugo about why this panel was important to him, it was a good alignment for us, and which is why moderating this panel is, I am honored for that. What I would love to do is I'd like to welcome each one of you to tell us, why is the future of work important to you? What is it about that that is interesting and that is passionate? Diana, let me begin with you.
I thought we were, well, anyway, doesn't matter. My interest has really 2 threads. The first thread is learning, particularly group and team learning, because I've learned that learning creates permanent change. Once we inquire into an issue or a skill and we learn more about it, we can never go back to being that team or group that hasn't learned and made improvements together. The second thread, which is really the reason behind the first, is creating healthy, humane, productive workspaces and workplaces. It's what drew me to Agile and agility in the first place. I was intrigued by the focus of both business and customer outcomes and the people-focused nature of it. So I'm interested in new ideas about the future of work because over time, I see the trends bend toward a demand for more humane work environments, along with the clearer, growing understanding in business that the way to true productivity and high performance lies through a focus on making life better for those who do the work.
Thank you, Diana. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this panel. Joseph, how about you?
My colleague John Blakey once said, the architects of this new temple of business will not be 19th century economists, but actually 21st century psychologists. Although the architects of business were 19th century economists, the designers and builders of the current organizational structures were 20th century engineers. They followed well-structured best practice based on ordered systems scientific management principles, which were often taken from manufacturing and which were aimed at optimizing the business to best meet the goal that was stated so succinctly by Art Kleiner. The primary goal of any organization is to fulfill the wants and the needs of its core group. All other goals are secondary. Unfortunately, this ordered systems approach oftentimes optimizes away flexibility and resilience of the organization, making it more brittle and more susceptible to threat. I think that the business of the future needs to be designed and built with a focus on people and built by people who can transcend the linear ordered systems thinking of the 19th and 20th century and approach it from a complex systems point of view. These people are the 21st century agile psychologists.
Thank you, Joseph. Fabiola, how about you?
Well, Anu, the revolution of work is happening, whether we are ready or not. But this future of work will not just miraculously emerge fully fledged overnight. It takes all of us to actually come together and figure it out. And the thing is, we don't really have much time to do this. Maurice Conti captured it best when he said, the way we work will change more in the next 20 years than it has the last 2000. So I guess, my dear friends, the race is certainly on.
Yeah, wow. Thank you, Fabiola. John, how about you?
Well, interesting. I was going to talk about the advent of tools here, and as I do that, I'm having difficulty with some of the with some of the flow of the videos today. So if I cut out, please apologize. This is an incredible time. It's an incredible time to be alive. Anu, as you know, one of our taglines in our practice for a long time has been bring humanity to the workplace. And I think what we're seeing right now is while it's a nice altruistic thing to do, there's really a business and organizational necessity to entrust more and more in high functioning teams. And as this element of disruption, just continues to bubble up, we are absolutely going to test that as much as we can. So I think it's really, and with automation coming in and COVID kind of pushing into remote workplaces, it is really an interesting time, and lots is now starting to bubble up in this area.
Thank you, John. Mirko.
Yeah, so if the pandemic has shown us one thing, then that true business agility doesn't stop at the company's front door. So uncertainty and volatility has reached our supply chain, and we need to rethink the way we find and treat our current, but also our new suppliers and partners. So what I predict a new age of collaboration within and beyond company borders. If we keep in mind that currently up to 80% of companies' revenue are in hands of procurement and sales, Agile has a huge potential for improving the businesses. And I think especially in our days, this is essential that we are looking at organizations more from an organism point of view and not just into one team, which is also important, of course, but this will impact the way we work all over, I'm pretty sure.
Amazing. What I'm picking up a thread across all five of you, even though you have such different emphasis on the future of work, it's about people. There's a thread around people, and without the people, without the focus on people, there is no future of work. So Fabiola, let me begin with you. From that HR perspective, and I'm sure everybody's as curious about this as I am, what does the future of HR look like, given our current situation with remote work and globalization and all the wonderful emphasis on people? What does HR in the future look like?
Yeah, as you said it correctly, HR and people are more important than ever, and we have to figure it out. John was talking about tools and being in that augmented era, and the problem is that our mindset and the way we look at work and the way we look at our people approach is still stuck somewhere in between the industrial and the information era, but work is already in the augmented era. So we have to catch up, and HR has to catch up first. But it's going to be more important to figure out our people approach than ever before, because it's not just about us being in the augmented era. We are also in the human economy. So economies get labeled by the work that people predominantly do. And today we are in this human era. And what does that mean? It means that we have to understand, what is it that makes us human? What is it that we are uniquely positioned for that only we bring to the table? It's all about our collaboration power, our imagination, passion, social and emotional intelligence, all the experience that we bring to the table, and we need to leverage that. So HR is going to be more important than ever.
Yeah. Joseph, as she talks about the HR perspective in the future, from a psychologist's point of view, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. Let's go on. So honestly, I agree plus 100, and also must say that, you know, in the last 6 months especially, and even over the past couple of years, the HR that I've dealt with at clients has totally failed at delivering on this, failed on supporting the process, failed on being there for the people who need it. And this is something that really needs to change. And this is why I really appreciate the thoughts and the approach that she's taking.
Yeah.
Another place where it's failed is in procurement. Let's make it very transparent. When a client calls me and asks what my daily rate is, my first question is, do I have to go through your procurement process or not?
Right.
If I do, I add an automatic 10 to 20% to my daily rate, because I know that I have to deal with somebody whose only goal is reducing that price by 10 to 20%.
Right.
Come on,
Right.
This is my thought. We're going into an era where we're trying to automate and reduce the number of people necessary. That means that we also have to focus the capacity that HR, that procurement, that leadership has on even better supporting the people who remain to do the jobs that only people can do.
Yeah, and I can relate to the procurement part of it, where, you know, when you have to deal with the procurement process, it's like, all right, so how do we deal with this? Mirko, since you are in that world of procurement, let's jump to you and see what are your thoughts on how do internal and external folks in an organization, how do we get them to work more as partners and not have consultants like us go, ooh, procurement, oh my God, I want to run. How do we stop that?
Yeah, let me tell you an analogy. So if you look for a partner for life, currently this transactional way we are working, we have sales departments, we have procurement departments, we have business, we have whatever, R&Ds and delivery and operations. It's kind of like, if you're looking for a partner in life, you delegate that to an agency, which just talks to another agency, and they find your partner, right? And then you should be satisfied. How weird is that? We would never do that in our lives, right? But we do it in business every day. Yeah. And so what we introduced was, and it's going really back to the core of Agile, it's all about the people. Do we like each other? Are we capable? Can we deliver the things? Do we have this personal, cultural fit, not just the business fit, right? We wouldn't talk to persons that we don't think they are capable enough.
Yeah.
So what we do instead, we invite everybody, decision takers, even the lawyers, the procurement guys, the business guys, the vendors, all at once, even various numbers of competitors, and we co-create together the proposals and improve the Agile contract, right? So we define how we like to work. And if we find out, sometimes you find out within 10 minutes, I don't like these guys. Yeah. And it's important that we don't waste their time. We we also respect the people. So we immediately make that a topic and we send them home. So again, I think it's not about procurement or sales or HR or even employees. It's about humans. Procurement people are humans too. and they're just, it's the system we need to change. And actually, with all the companies we're working, they're super happy to break out of their current system and support something that is more valuable for all of us.
And as you talk about that, what comes to my mind is this whole concept of agility for the organization, or business agility. Now, I know everybody throws that word around like, popcorn. But John, you're focused in that world. What does that word mean? And what does that look like in the future? What is business agility?
Yeah, it's interesting because once you throw agile into anything, people have a tendency to bring their own interpretations around it. The easiest way, kind of the shorthanded, is an adaptable organization, right? So an organization that is trying to achieve business agility is one that is trying to be a responsive organization, responsive to the marketplace, and one that can adapt not only to the marketplace, but adapt its own internal environment on an ongoing basis going forward. So when we actually take a look at kind of traditionally how we looked at things, and when we had a role and we had professional development, it was fairly static in an organization, for an extended period of time. And as businesses are trying to now create this new sense of, muscle memory about, being more of a chameleon, in terms of being able to change and adapt to that environment, it's really going to be a challenge for the HR departments for how do we, provide career pathing that makes sense but is not so rigid that we're, kind of sending people in the wrong direction. So this kind of living environment that kind of goes forward. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge as we go forward the next several years. But again, that goal of the adaptive organization is going to require that when we take a look at all of the contributors, more so than ever, the kind of knowledge workers, how can we continue to have that community adapt?
Right, and everything that you've said, right? I know for me, and throughout my career, the companies that I have enjoyed working in is because the people I worked with, we worked well, and it was just an amazing team. And the culture in the company allowed us to do that, which leads me to you, Diana. Anytime I talk about teams, I talk about Diana Larsen. So in this remote world, given that we have so many things happening in our world with remote work happening and different cultures coming in, we have people throwing out words of agility, procurement's changing, HR is changing, people are focusing on the human psychology, not just our output. How do we build these groups of people into teams that will give us joy, bring us joy, and allow us to want to come to work?
Yeah, thank you. I know. It's interesting. I was also able to listen to the last panel, the future of organization, and the theme came up there that I think is relevant here as well, which is the theme of learning. It's like, how do we create environments where folks can learn together? And everyone needs to be able to manage their own individual learning, but in order to really move into the sort of agile, adaptable, resilient kind of future we want, we have to be able to learn collectively and understand our co-intelligence and how we can move that forward. So, in my point of view, the team, if we can work with a number of teams and understand what's going on with a number of teams, both their aspirations and their capabilities and their impediments, that is a fractal of the larger system. So we learn more about the larger system by focusing on numbers of teams. And I think that is going to become more apparent as we go along. You brought up remote, and I think one of the very fascinating things for me about this time is that while there have been a lot of people who've been working remote for a long time, now that so many of us are doing it, we are very much coming face to face with both the potential advantages of it. I mean, here we all sit in, 5 different time zones, right? And yet, we're having this rich conversation. It's hugely advantageous, right? But also the drawbacks. I recently gave a talk about change and the fears that come along with change. And, in this world of social distancing, am I going to be able to hug my grandchildren again? They, if they're not living in my house, how do I interact with them? So, I can talk with them over Zoom and over FaceTime, but that's not the same relationship, right? And the same is true in teams. I have a teacher who talks about, so good to see your face again, so good to feel your breath again.
Yeah.
So there is that sort of human touch connection that we are missing in the remote world. And we need to figure out how to get better and better at that, and hopefully get past the pandemic, which will let us have those connections again. And there are tremendous advantages to working remotely, and we are beginning to understand more and more about what those are and how we can take advantage of them.
And, one thing I've noticed is as a trainer and coach, I get to work with a bunch of students and clients every day. And I notice this with my daughters, right? These are kids who cannot live without their gadgets, but yet when they have to do learning through remote tools, they are struggling, right? And I talk to my daughter who has a job, and she says the same thing. It's hard to work with people on Zoom. And what surprised me the most about that was this is the generation that is used to these gadgets. And yet they seem to be struggling the most with working with and learning from gadgets, right? And Joseph, when we talked earlier, you said something that actually stayed with me, and I've been talking to my daughter about this, about generational impact, change with different generations adapt to change differently. Right? And I think when we talk about the different change that's happening in the world, what is our capacity for change in different generations? And how does that impact how we go forward? How do we work together?
I think before we get to the point of talking about generational differences, I think we need to get to the core of the problem, which is something that Diana talked about, which is what we call the cognitive dissonance of virtual environments. Right. The problem with working like this is that we cannot ignore the fact that we are not together. That's the basic thing. And actually, I prefer to turn off my camera, to not watch the video, or to do a phone call. Because doing that, I'm less confronted with this cognitive dissonance of being constantly reminded that we're not together and for the reasons that we're not together. So the coping mechanisms, the ability to cope, are definitely different over generations. Yeah. Even the younger generations, as you say, your grandchildren are being challenged. I'm happy that my grandchildren are only 1 and 2.5, but still when we call them on the phone, we can barely talk with our kids because we're constantly hearing grandma, grandpa in the background. And this is the thing that they're growing up in a different environment that we are, but we still all have these challenges, and just our coping mechanisms that we've learned are different, and they're constantly being challenged.
Right, and if you take that into an organization, right, if you take that cognitive dissonance into an organization, and I'd throw this out to any one of you because all of you have been talking about impacts. what does that do to creating high-performing teams, to getting good talent into the organization, creating partnerships? How do you deal with that? How can we help our organizations move forward? What are your insights or wisdom for the audience here?
I throw out an additional question to this, something that I've heard a number of times, actually too many times to just ignore it, is the fact that many companies who were forced to let their people work in home office have demanded that they have their cameras on all the time so that the managers can make sure that the people are sitting at their desks working. This is once again getting back to output versus outcome. I'd really be interested in your thoughts on that.
Me?
Yeah, I can add something on that, because how we treat our suppliers, I hate the word because it's not on the same, acting on the same eye level. It's, you just need to supply. No, I prefer you're a potential or you're a partner. And how we treat them up till now was, this is the list of specifications, right? Deliver. And so it was less outcome-based agreement. It was more of an output-based, exactly what you said, Joseph. So what we are doing is we really start, in these workshops we do with the vendors, and we obviously need to prepare it beforehand. We talk about the purpose first, right? What's the company strategy? Which business objectives do we want to achieve, and we overlap the both companies and now in an intercompany, but we could do that also with just a single team. Talk about the alignment. What's the direction? What's the purpose of what we all do? And this then, from my experience, creates this flow, this pull that we are all looking for. And if you start to combine that with, for example, a self-selection. Now, how weird is that? We do the self-selection with vendors, right? And sometimes in a super complex environment, one vendor is not enough. So we let them form alliances throughout the workshop. So it's really, from my perspective, it's all about we need to really start with the purpose and then this outcome based, and it goes back to the contract. What do we write into contract?
Yeah, I'd jump on that as well. And that is, where things are heading. And again, when you take a look at the expected product life that we have right now is so short, that this concept that businesses and management can kind of control everything throughout it is gone. So Joseph, there will be bad behavior and people that are going to apply practices that's all they know. But the reality is organizations that do well will be the ones where leadership's primary goal is to provide a compelling and clear vision for the organization and continue to communicate that on a drumbeat. And when we think of mission, vision, values, the mission element of that is going to be at the team level. And there's going to be more and more autonomy that those organizations that are going to succeed are going to need to hand to teams, which means we need to invest in those teams. They need to be high-performing teams. They need to be aligned to what we're doing. I think that's the exciting part of where we're going. Is that organizations that succeed, in my opinion, will be the ones that push in this direction of a more humane organization, but they're going to be doing it because it's actually going to benefit the shareholders. So it's the first time that we've had that alignment.
Yeah. John, I totally agree on that. This is essentially von Clausewitz's idea of commander's intent. You tell people what you want and why you want it, you train them and you trust them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, while we have to connect people to that purpose, we also have to make sure that we understand where is our mindset at. Why are we doing the things the way that we are doing it? And one of the things that we see when it comes to learning organization or a highly creative and innovative organization is that we are still stuck in that metaphor of the organization as a machine. So as running like a Swiss clockwork. And that model around predictability and specialization and standardization, that focus on efficiency, is actually hindering us to become a learning organization. Because what does work mean in that efficiency model? It means work is scripted. We have our detailed job descriptions. We have our annual performance goals and things like that are going to tell people what to do, what are we going to expect, what's the outcome, and how are you going to approach that. But that's no longer the world that we live in. We need people to be able to bring themselves to the table. We need them to leverage the diversity of thought that we have in our teams so that they can solve the biggest problems that we are trying to solve. We cannot do that if we are stuck in that efficiency model. So when you hear words like efficiency, meritocracy, and so on and so forth, you know you're not really dealing with an agile organization. You're not dealing with a company that is building that resilience and that adaptability into their workflow.
Right.
Excuse me, I need to just pick up on one sentence you said, was that explain to people why we do things the way we do. That sounds like a justification and a rationalization for maintaining the status quo. Am I right?
I don't agree with that statement. If we understand, because the problem is with our mindset, a lot of the behavior and thinking we're not even aware of. So like we're still hiring for physical attributes, which we shouldn't be aware of. We are often not aware of, but we're still doing it. But if we can understand where our thinking is at, what metaphor we use, then we can also change our behavior. But if we are not aware of our thinking, of our beliefs and behaviors, we cannot change, we cannot adapt. And we are hanging on to the things that we know, because at the end of the day, that got us through the last century and made us successful as organizations. But now we have to fundamentally change. We have to change our perspective on the world if we want to continue to be successful. And we cannot build those adaptive and resilient organizations if we don't have the autonomous or aligned autonomous self-organizing teams, and if we don't let go of some of the control that we were hanging on to previously.
I think what you were saying, Fabiola, I think is so right on, because what you're describing is a system made up of some very rigid boundaries, right? And that system was created because of folks having a fear of ambiguity, a fear of uncertainty, uncertain outcomes, and all that goes along with it. I mean, the whole VUCA thing, right? And what did, in order to move forward into the future of work, we are going to have to make those boundaries. We don't have to eliminate them entirely. That also doesn't work, but we have to make them more permeable. More flexible, so that we can, we can't know, for instance, as Mirko was talking about, all the possibilities that our employees might be bringing to the workplace, right? And the way in which, if they do become interested in some other part of the work, they may be able to make an enormous contribution. As long as we keep the boundaries so rigid, we lose all that potential. Right. And I think that's a huge piece here, is that by holding on to those old ways, those old rigidly structured ways, there was a consultant I knew many, many years ago, Kathy Dannemiller, and she would talk about organizational arthritis. That everywhere there was a boundary between silos or between job descriptions, inflexibility set in, right? And I love that term. And I think that's really important, is to realize that when Kent Beck wrote the book, the first XP book, it was kind of entitled Embrace Change. We have to be willing to be open and curious. This is the learning part, right? We have to be open and curious about what are the new potentials, what are the, what lies in that uncertain future, what lies behind that ambiguity, and how are we going to be able to get good at being able to take advantage of the advantages and benefits we see possible there.
Right.
I'd say that one critical element that's going to need to take place here. We're starting to see it a little bit, but not as much as we need to. And that's the concept where we've kind of put an X through project and we're moving more to product. Similarly, we need to put an X through change management. Change management is a binary state. It is, we're here, we're going to move here, and then that presumes that there will be stability at that point in time. And the mind shift needs to move to evolution. And if we're not continuing to evolve, we will fall behind. We will die.
Yeah.
I would like to add something to that.
Let me just say one thing.
Diana, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just heard something the other day, John, that really resonates with that. And that is ancient wisdom comes from, long ago, the way people interacted, where there was an understanding that whatever point you find there's self at, there's really no going back. There's only try something new, and if that doesn't work, try again, or, now we get the go ahead, let's proceed. Right. So the only two answers are try again and let's proceed. And I loved that concept, and it speaks exactly to what you were just saying. Sorry, Mirko, go ahead.
No, all good, Diana. So I just wanted to add one aspect, and maybe some of the leaders listen to us, and sometimes I hear statements like, we don't have a plan, we don't have boundaries, we are agile. And that's scary, isn't it, to a lot of kind of old-fashioned leaders, which are on their journey as well. And what I disagree with that there are no boundaries. They are. And what we do and what I really recommend is to make them explicit, right? Include the team and the team members, the leaders, the ones who are able to change those. To take an example, empowerment, right? We do always an internal negotiation, and we call it like that. What's our competence as a team, and which are the competences that are still with the leadership? And there is no right or wrong, but as long as it's not explicit, we can't improve, right? And that's, for me, what was a big learning several years ago.
That's great conversation. So I do have a couple of questions from the audience members, so I'm going to kind of pivot you guys a little bit. So there's the last question I think that I see is very interesting to me. The question is from Gonzalez Pereira. He says, Netflix CEO said remote work will not be able to build amazing products. The top technology and software they had till March is not good enough to help us. So Netflix CEO said, no remote work, bad stuff. Microsoft announced that they have so many people in the world using Teams and everything is working great. And these two large organizations, these are the contradictory statements. And yet, as you see, Microsoft is not able to deliver continuously, and Netflix can. Thoughts on that? I thought that was a very interesting comment. So who would like to begin? Fabiola?
I think for me, it's not either or. It's going to be both. So we're going to be, we've been more flexible around our work schedules and where and how we work for a long time. So it's not just COVID that put us into the virtual world. So a lot of that is going to stay. But people are not going to come to the office to do work where it's just put your head down and just get it out of the way. Those types of jobs are going to be done from home or eventually in a coffee shop or at an airport. But people are still going to come to the office to do that tribal bonding, to collaborate, to be creative. And we need to create workspace that facilitates that. So work is not going to be, you sit in your cubicle and heads down. That's no longer going to be what work is about. But people are still going to come to the office. They still need to bond and create that tribal bond and be collaborative together and innovative together.
Very cool.
Yeah, I might add on that too. It's just, it's really, we can all paint the picture of the ideal structure, right? Everybody comes together and we've got, this great collaborative environment, and we're always working on, improving the team. But very few organizations have that ideal structure kind of across the organization, especially when we talk about global organizations. So what's the reality that your organization, if you're listening in, or you're dealing with? I mean, do you have colleagues that are in 4 time zones away? I mean, or do you have colleagues where in this environment right now with COVID, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could get to the office, but we just don't have that. So what can you do in the constraints that you have to make the best scenario and always be working on continuously?
Yeah.
You can't push things to stop and, kind of wait until things are ideal. And you should always be trying to improve whatever you've got.
Yeah, and Joey, coming back to that focus on evolution, not just a singular change, which I'm writing down my notes, by the way, and I have taken down lots of good nuggets here. So following along on this conversation, there's another question by Pedro Silva. Do you think that remote work will be the standard for organizations in the near future?
I think it's going to be a component of it. So virtual work is here to stay, but was here to stay before COVID. But we're certainly going to mix it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to extend the question, and what I'm observing, and we are an example as well of that, is that up till now we had businesses around, or companies around the business case that serve the product, and more we have this more and more collaborative, multiple businesses that do something together to serve the market needs. And I think no matter if they are virtual or not, more and more, it could be individually, it could be a business, team of teams, businesses of businesses. I think this inter-company collaboration, I think we will see much more of that, and even between competitors, because sometimes there are competitors, then they switch to partners, and then they become each other's customer, right? If you think of that.
Thank you.
From a psychological point of view, one thing, Netflix and Microsoft might be Netflix and Microsoft, but for me as a psychologist with a sample size of 2, none of these statements are statistically significant. Mm-hmm. Also, the question, is this going to be the new normal? Please define normal. So normal means something generally accepted for such a large quantity or sample size, and that ignores the specific needs of any organization. Mm. So I think, yes, it will be for some. Just as Fabiola said, yeah, it will be part. It will be one alternative. How much it is used. What we need is the ability and the flexibility to use it where it is the best way to do things.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we've all just had a great example of that, right? The fact that we had both come together in person and come together remotely, and probably some other variations on those themes available to us when we hit this pandemic that came to us. It gave us the flexibility to switch how we work. And so that focus on what kinds of flexibility do we need, I think that's what organizations need moving forward. If it reminds Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of my idols, which when someone asked her how many is the right number of women on the U.S. Supreme Court, she said 9, which is all of them, right? And we have the flexibility to do that because we've had 9 men and we've had a combination, and we could have 9 women someday. That it is that looking at the various possibilities and then choosing the right one that is the right one for in the moment is so important. And knowing that we need to maintain that flexibility, that adaptability around the approaches that we take.
Yeah. And I think that leads into that whole evolution, right? It's not a choice which stays forever, but it's a constant evolution towards something. Fabiola, you were about to say something?
Yes, and we are only now learning about what's the impact of being fully virtual. Right. So we know that team performance or performance went up at the beginning, but it's dropping now to more or less the same level or underneath because people are missing the structure. We are just now learning all the also emotional impact that working from home has. So we're still in that learning phase. And we can't just say because we're in this phase right now that this is going to be the only outcome. The world is going to change, and it's going to change fast, and we have to be open to all the different options and see what fits best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Diana, there's a very specific question for you. The question is, Diana, if you need to rewrite one of your books after the whole COVID situation, which one would you change and why?
Oh gosh. The simple answer is I would probably change the Liftoff book to include more about how to do team chartering remotely. We didn't put a lot of that in there. Although for skilled facilitators, that's not a difficult translation. So there's that. For the Agile Retrospectives book, we actually, I'm partnering with someone who we are now writing a book about retrospectives. It's in the very early stages, but across more of the organization, more outside of IT. So that one's in process. And, but the 5 rules for accelerated learning book, those are still solid. We still have to think about the fact that we're working with humans first.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those, they all have different tweaks and new ways. But, Agile Retrospectives came out in 2006. So there's been a lot of things that have changed since then.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So Joseph, there's a question for you. What should we expect from the new normal, which we figured out we don't know what the normal is? What are the consequences for workers as they try and figure out their new normal?
How much time do we have left?
About 2 minutes.
Okay. The problem is, once again, defining normal. And this whole thing about people saying we want to get back to normal. Damn it, normal is what got us to where we are now. Do we really want to go back to that? Why are people holding on to this instead of taking the chance, taking this unique opportunity that we hopefully will only have once in our lives to change things? And I don't know if we can define one unique new normal.
Yeah.
I wish I could. I'd probably earn a lot of money off it, but I don't think it's possible.
Thank you. I completely agree. And I think as a consultant, trainer, coach, that's what appeals to me as well, saying, I don't know what tomorrow will hold. I just need to deal with today with the people I work with. And today I've had this amazing opportunity to work with all of you. I got to speak with all of you. That would not have been possible maybe 3 months ago for me. I may not have met with all of you in the same room. So I'd love to get your last, we're about to close up. So what are your last wisdom or on this topic for now, not forever, just for now, if you had to leave the audience with one thought to think about, what would you tell them? What does the future of work hold?
Well, for me, it's not so much what it holds, it's more what we can do about it, because we get to shape it. Especially for us folks in HR, for the first time ever, we actually get to reinvent stuff. We often have that gut feeling that is telling us there must be a better way out there. As Joseph said, now is the time to actually do it. So we have to be gutsy about it and do something about it. So it's never been this exciting, but also frightening to be in organizations, to be in HR. So it's a fun time for sure.
Thank you, Fabiola.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Joseph, go ahead.
People need to have the feeling that they have as much influence as possible into decisions that affect their lives and their careers. Take advantage of this. Grab that and take as much advantage of this that you can. As Grace Hopper once said, it's always better to beg forgiveness than to ask permission. Take advantage of this opportunity. while no one else is noticing.
Yeah. Thank you, Joseph. John?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, we're continuing to move toward cross-functional, behaviors, but we still have functional structures largely in most global organizations, which are going to die hard. So as we step into making these modifications in the organizations that we're in, alignment. Make sure that you're pulling the right people in and collaborating on the front end. There's going to be a lot more success if there's a lot of work put on the front end and continuously in the alignment phase.
Thank you, John. Mirko?
Yeah, I think I really take it to the very simple core things of Agile. If there is a challenge, people often ask me, what can we do about it? Well, what's the minimum thing we can do now that doesn't take us weeks and months? So just experiment, learn from it. Is it yourself? Is it your team? Is it an organization? Is it as Joseph mentioned, in the sales process, right? Why not sending 1 page instead of 100 pages and see what happens? And the other thought is, whatever we do with Agile, no matter it's a practice, we talk about values, it's about the humans. Bring the right people together and the magic will happen.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Mirko. Diana.
Avoided the drinking game. Didn't start talking till I was unmuted. For me, the focus really is on at the individual team or, department, organization level to really think about the learning, how you are going to become more adept at learning at all of those scales, and consider the fluencies that you want to develop as you go along. And once you have a clear idea of that, make sure that's where your investments are going.
Right.
So that your investments are in alignment with the learning that you want to have happen in your organization. And I think that's going to be, small steps and some of the other things that folks have said. Yeah. All of that taken together is going to move us into the future of work in an evolutionary way.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this conversation. I've taken away so many notes as you guys have talked. Organizational arthritis. Oh my God, I am so totally using that, Diana. This conversation actually gave me so much hope. And I think what I've realized with this whole pandemic is more than ever, I cannot succeed alone. More than ever, I need connections. More than ever, I need partnerships, whether it's internal or external or whatever. I think as an Agilist, all I can say is thank you for giving me the hope to know that the future of work is strong, is possible, and all we can do is try something new and move ahead. Only 2 options: evolve. Thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to meeting you all in person. We're all in different time zones. Maybe next year we'll be all